from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker, a professional queer since 2014. In studio with me is my executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
It's the end of the week, so let's talk about culture and entertainment. Let's take a break. I do want to mention the passing of Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys. That was a shocker. I know, Patrick, in the control room, this was a bummer.
Yeah, it was really tough news to hear. As I was saying to you guys before we got the show started, you kind of had three groups of music fans in the city. You had the Beatles people, the Beach Boys people, and the Stones people. Mm-hmm. And, you know, certainly they all kind of listened to what each other was doing and mm-hmm. sort of took inspiration and little bits and pieces from each other. So, you know, there's a lot of Beach Boys influence throughout what was happening in music in the 60s and early 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, Pet Sounds, that album is considered one of the greatest of all time.
Well, and growing up in Southern California, we felt like they were ours. I know that's not true, but that was the, you know, it was the whole California.
If any band, if California could claim any band, I think it'd be the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Well, it's our condolences to folks who are feeling it right now. I know it was a shock to me, and I know that, you know, Brian wasn't part of the LGBTQ community, but you know that music was so iconic and part of so many queer people's lives. So rest in power, rest in peace, rest in music, Brian Wilson. Want to remind folks, Queer Gaze presents Pride at Imagine Willow Creek. Queer Gaze is excited to once again partner with Imagine Willow Creek Theater to showcase a series of queer films this June. So you can get ready to laugh, to cheer, to shed a joyful tear every Sunday at 2 p.m. this month when they're celebrating queer films new and old. You can get tickets at imagine-entertainment.com/queer-gaze. It's a ridiculous.
Wow.
We're going to have the link in our show notes and on our website, and you can also find it on our Blue Sky account. This Sunday, June 15th, Queer Gaze will screen Inappropriate Behavior, a secretly bisexual Persian-American Brooklynite is struggling to navigate her recent breakup in this romantic dramedy. We follow Shireen as she struggles to rebuild her life while reminiscing about her relationship with her ex. Again, tickets are on sale at imagine-entertainment.com/queer-gaze. Find that link on our website, on our Blue Sky. We're at thegailyshow.org on our Blue Sky. All right, today you've got Jim and I, because we got a lot to discuss and catch you up on. So Jim got to go to two shows this week. I got to go to one of them, Mae West and the Trial of Sex, a production by Walking Shadow Theater at the Crane Theater in Northeast Minneapolis. Significant Other at Lyric Arts in Anoka, Minnesota. I've also, we've got some reviews of The Lost Boys, which is a French-Belgium film. The Summer of Carmen, which is a film from Greece. There's an Argentinian TV series, Everything I Like. And then with HBO's Gilded Age returning this month, we're going to look back at the queer storyline in its first two seasons. And just to, you know, tip my cards a little bit, we're putting queer storyline in massive quotation marks. I want to be mindful here as we're getting started, though, that we don't do theater reviews at the Gailey Show. I wish we had the time to do them. It's not something that we can take the capacity on in a thoughtful and equitable way to do it. So this is why we don't do theater reviews. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I'm going to pitch them at the Gailey Show to come and review my production, sorry, just hold off on that. We don't do that as of yet. It lucked out that Jim got to see an appropriate adult, Significant Other at Lyric Arts this past Sunday, and then we both got to see Mae West and the Trial of Sex on Monday night. Typically, you know, we're not able to be here in the cities to do that, so we thought, why not talk about these shows? They're queer shows. This is the Gailey Show. So without further ado, let's start with Significant Other. It's running at Lyric Arts until June 22nd. It's written by Joshua Harmon, directed by Max Ratanowicz, 4 things that we always ask and let folks know. Is there animal violence? No. Is there anti-LGBTQ violence? No. Was there an HIV storyline? We mentioned this to make sure that those storylines are accurate and honest in their depictions. No, there wasn't. Happy ending, Jim? It's more of a yes or no question.
Yeah, it depends. I don't like being cornered. I think it depends on your perspective. I felt no.
Okay.
But I think somebody
somebody
could say yes.
Okay. It depends. Yes or no. Here's the show description. Jordan Berman would love to be in love, but finding Mr. Right is easier said than done. Diving into the complexities of modern relationships with humor and heart, Significant Other is a candid and charming exploration of all types of love. As Jordan watches his best friends get engaged one by one, as his tight-knit trio starts to settle down, Jordan is left grappling with his own desire for companionship. Jim, I turn the mic over to you.
I thought, and I said this on my own Facebook, that Max Botanovich was a great selection to direct this show, because it took, you had to be patient with it. If you're a straight person, as a lot of folks up in Anoka are, and you're watching a story about, younger women getting married, that's the natural order of things from that perspective. And so you could go, oh, that's fun. I know this isn't that great, and all the quirky things that people do. But these women were all friends with this gay guy who was not finding relationships to the same degree and to his satisfaction. And we probably all know people like that, gay or straight or otherwise, who, for whatever reason, can't find the connection that they're looking for, or the connection they're looking for doesn't find them. And so increasingly he got a little more frustrated, and it turned from kind of a jokey comedy into, you started to feel the regret and feel the sadness and feel the sort of growing resentment. And then there's a beautiful payoff speech that he delivers, the main character delivers, and that kind of, I don't know, sort of punched back at all the expectations of marriage, I thought, which some people might not agree with, but from an outsider's perspective, if you can't find the right person, or you're in the days when we weren't allowed to be married, and if those days come back again, the resentment that, why is this the only way we can exist? Why does that have to be the way it is? And why can't, in this case, I find it, this character find it? And so I thought it ended up in a very different place than it started. And you know me, I love pathos. And so it was more satisfying because it seemed like it was about something real, and that it wasn't a conventional, easy ending where everybody rode off into the sunset. It was the opposite of that. And I really appreciated it. Good on Lyric Arts for doing a show like this. Max, of course, did a great job. Cast was great. And I think it's worth seeing. It'll challenge some of your expectations, but I think it's worth the ticket price. So go see it.
And for folks who are in Chicago, if they see a production of Significant Other coming their way, see it?
Yeah. Yes. Joshua Harmon is the playwright. I was frustrated at the beginning, and this often happens, John. I get frustrated at something at the beginning, but if I stick with it, if I don't give up on it,
the majority of the time.
Yes. Well, but I eventually appreciate it in its totality. And I would say that about Significant Other. If I stopped in the middle, I'd say that was unsatisfying. But if you wait till the end,
it pays off.
It does pay off.
Good.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, up next, Mae West and the Trial of Sex, a production by Walking Shadow Theater Company, written by John Heimbach, directed by Allison Vincent, a world premiere running through June 22nd at the Crane Theater in Northeast Minneapolis. Again, our 4 items. Is there animal violence? No. Is there anti-LGBTQ violence? No. Was there an HIV storyline? We mentioned again to share if that storyline was accurate and honest in its depiction. No. Was there a happy ending? No.
Well,
but not no in the sense like there was an LGBTQ couple, like a gay couple, a lesbian couple, and they got broken up by the end. I think it's the events that are that happen over the course of the play. So that it'll help if I share the description. Provocative playwright Mae West runs afoul of Broadway censors. Her popular play Sex is rated for obscenity, Tammany Hall claims it was necessary to prevent West's new homosexual drama, The Drag, from corrupting the youth of New York. The sultry starlet faces time in the slammer if she doesn't amend her immoral ways and stop sex at once. The play draws from court documents, newspapers, and West's own plays to explore the overt sexuality and queerness of her rise to fame. And playwright Heimbach uses Mae West's legal battle over censorship to show how queer representation became criminalized both on stage and off stage, cutting LGBTQIA people off from their past. It is about censorship, so it is a drama in the end, and that's why you can sort of say, well, you know, if you're a fan of censorship, this is a happy ending. If you're not a fan of censorship, then this is not a happy ending.
Well, her life went on beyond her time on the New York stage,
She was like 70 years in film, TV, and stage.
So my feeling is, if you know that story, she does went out in the end. She does overcome this sort of petty, the whole idea around censorship, that I'm not going to let you see what you want because I don't like it. That pig ignorant stuff drives me nuts. And it was really well presented in this. Once again, sanctimonious hypocrites talking about why you can't see this thing on the stage.
Well, there's that, but there's also a great line that John has throughout of, I don't believe in censorship, but you know, we have just a minute here to keep going. We're going to continue this review. Something that, you know, it was really, I didn't know. I mean, I just knew Mae West from like film, so I didn't really have a sense of her behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And the work that she did and what she, you know, her portrayal of her behind the camera and as a playwright. So I was very interested to see how she did all of this and what a champion she was for queerness and queer people in the theater and these storylines, and how she was facing jail time. We're going to talk more about that when we come back. You can connect with more progressive news and radio at am950radio.com and heartlandsignal.com. Follow us on Blue Sky for more progressive news and analysis. We're at thegaleshow.org on Blue Sky. You're listening to The Gailey Show. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm your host, John Parker. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour. It is the end of the week, so we're taking this time to talk about culture and entertainment. We are talking about Mae West and the Trial of Sex, which is a Walking Shadow Theater production at the Crane Theater in Northeast, about Mae West and how her shows, Sex, that was what it was called, was raided by the cops, and how they were censoring it and trying to prevent her from mounting a show called The Drag, which was about drag queens.
Yeah, it was. We're making it sound kind of like an historic, conventional play, but it wasn't that, of course. It was, and this is to John's credit, this is to Allison Vincent's credit, the director. This thing was like, you've seen a demolition derby, right? Or a roller derby. The idea was these people, these 7 actors, is that right? 6 actors, I'm sorry, 7 actors, were banging into each other like so many jalopies, you know, in a crashing down a hill. It was manic and fast and chaotic.
You don't mean that in a bad way.
I don't mean it in a bad way.
Crosses that you hate it.
No. It was what would you call that? It was mesmerizing because it was just coming at you all barrels. It's like an old-fashioned film in the 30s.
It had Chicago energy. If you have seen the film Chicago, it had that like energy to it and that like cutting and speed and action happening here and there, and you're just sort of like, wow.
Sets flying and rat-a-tat dialogue, and so it was, you know, it was throttle to the floor the whole time, and so you're getting pieces and glimpses of it, and you're in the courtroom, and then you're in the theater, and then you're somewhere else, and then you're somewhere else. So you really had to I felt like I needed a bottle of water with me to keep hydrated while we were watching, but it was sort of fascinating because of that. It could have been done in a very dry, uninteresting, methodical way. Then this happened and things on the screen, 1941. You know what I mean? It wasn't that way. It was like history in the moment, told in the style of vaudeville, is what it seemed like. It was really a brilliant construction and then a brilliant execution of it. And the people in the show literally worked their badunzos off. And it was...
Is that a word?
Well, it implies something that is a word. And I thought they were great. One person that stood out for me was Kelsey Kramer. They were all playing 100 characters, and she was somehow made each one distinctive and each one funny in its own way. She made it look easy, and they were all working really hard, and they were all every bit as important as Emily, who played Mae West. I felt you just couldn't have... it was one of those perfect Jenga things where you pull one of them out of there and the whole thing comes down. So I thought it was one of a kind, like so many of Walking Shadows productions.
I feel like I know that the idea, the image of a kaleidoscope is so overused as a metaphor, but it has that metaphor of, when you turn and spin the dial on a kaleidoscope, and it's like everything is just falls into place. You know what I mean? And you have that circular energy, and there was that circular energy on stage. So things were always moving. And, people, 6 of them, or the actors, were moving in different characters, and you were moving through time, but you never felt like you were lost. I never felt like I was like, okay, where are we now? And who's that person now? Like it was all very seamless. And Emily, who plays Mae West, she only played Mae West. And she did such a fantastic job that I thought this was a very brave choice to do at the end, where they show a clip of Mae West singing. And you just see how spot on Emily's portrayal was of Mae, and how it wasn't caricature. And I really appreciated that. And I did not realize how much the legal apparatus was used against Mae, and how she was involved in so many trials around censorship. And I was ultimately frustrated at the end, not at the play, but at the fact that these arguments that are being used against us today have been used over and over and over and over again. And there is this, I'm going to say now, piece of propaganda, or maybe something we try to tell ourselves of like, this is the last gasp of the GOP. Like, this is it. They're going to burn themselves out, and that's it. No, the arguments they use in this play to justify pulling shows off of Broadway, not only Mae West, but to prevent other shows from making it that deal with LGBTQ people and deal honestly with sex and people who aren't, the cleavers. Nobody's going to know who that reference is.
I do.
Leave it to Beaver. But it's really frustrating. And I think that we need to acknowledge that we are dealing with that for decades now. And we need to incorporate that into our thinking. This isn't new. They aren't coming up with something new. It is literally, in some instances, word for word, what we are hearing now from Florida, DeSantis, MAGA. It's all of this was in the play. All of this was happening in the 1920s.
They cling to their ignorance, don't they?
We think of where we're headed in terms of censorship, they were already doing in the United States. They were pulling shows off of Broadway
to keep them clean and family appropriate.
But for the youth, and so we are rapidly heading back there. But this is the problem, is that we're not going into some new unknown territory. We are going back to something that was very terrible. And we need to be aware of that. And I don't say that as like, because I think sometimes people go, oh, well, the past, we got through that. We'll get through it again. No, that's not the point here. No. The point is that they had this regime, the right, the MAGA, the authoritarians, the anti-queer people. They had this power, and we use the democratic system to say, stop it. You can't censor us. You can't erase us. We will live our lives. We will love who we want to live. We will live how we want to live, and we will tell our stories honestly and authentically. And you can't discriminate against us. And they say that's an attack on free speech because they can't regulate us and they can't bury us. Mm-hmm. And so that is where, we need to keep committing to the democratic process and fighting back against that. And that is not just using the ballot box. That is practicing democracy everywhere, including in the courts, as much as we can do it within the courts in every space. But that was sort of I enjoyed the production, but what I ended up thinking about a lot was what they had to deal with, Mae West and all the people that were surrounding her, the actors and the playwrights and the lawyers, the many, many lawyers. And, what do we can't go back there. We can't allow them to have that level of power because it took decades to undo what happens in this play.
And our friend Bobby Smith did a great job on the props.
Yes, he did. Congratulations, Bobby. Congratulations to the whole team. We are going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about some films as well. So more to come. Please support our sponsors and advertisers. They make this possible on AM 950 and on WCPT 820. Thank them. Tell them you heard about them on The Gailey Show. Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing in the mornings on your morning drive on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ progressive radio news and talk show in the country. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing about us. We are doing something here that nobody else is doing within the country, and so we very much appreciate your support. I'm getting into my Gilded Age voice from HBO. Appreciate. That's for later in the episode. Oh, I know. Am I being too fey? We are just past 33 minutes after the hour, joined by Jim Pounds, my executive producer. We are talking about culture and entertainment. We're going to talk about a couple films now. So the first one is The Lost Boys. It is a French-Belgian film production. Original title is Le Paradis, which is the paradise that comes into play here in this review. It was released in 2023. It's an hour and 23 minutes long. It's directed by Zeno Graton, written by Zeno and Clara Boreau and Martin Lois. It stars Khalil Ben Ghariba and Julien de Saint-Jean. Ghariba plays Joe, and Saint-Jean plays William. It's available on Deku and Here TV, those streaming services, as part of those subscriptions. Also available to rent on Prime Video and may be available on Apple TV+, YouTube TV, and Fandango, but please check those services to confirm availability. As always, was there animal violence? As always, we always check for these 4 things when we review a film or TV show. Was there animal violence? No. Was there anti-LGBTQ violence? No. Was there an HIV storyline? No. We check that to see if it's accurate and authentic. And then, was there a happy ending? I'm going to say yes and no, depending on your interpretation. The official description is: in a juvenile reform center, a place governed by the prohibition of physical contact, Joe and William fall in love, and to love each other, they will have to break the law. I would argue that's not accurate. It's about teenage boys who are incarcerated in youth detention, so not an adult prison. Interestingly, you don't get to know their offenses, for why they are there, why they are incarcerated. The primary relationship is surrounded, so Joe and William is surrounded by various attempts of all the teenagers of how they're going to exit, how they're going to leave the system, the facility. We watch their various school and work activities, which there are a lot of. We see them welding, we see them, making cameras, we see them, learning rap, which is a way of them doing literature courses, so doing poetry. A lot of these different types of activities that we see them doing. We, of course, I mean, not of course, but we do see toxic masculinity in there, a lot of jocular behavior, a lot of toxic masculinity, but also juxtaposed against some really lovely moments. What I'm thinking of is that there's one individual two guys actually, who just go at each other all the time. And then when one of them is denied parole and being able to leave the facility, the first person to comfort him is the guy that's been, shouting and shoving him the entire film. So I think that that's because they both realized the joint struggles that they have about how they're going to leave and be reintegrated into the outside world. Joe has a history of breaking out of the facility, but also has a pathway out that he's on. William is not on that track. And a major question the film asks is, are Joe and William, is their relationship enough so that when they get out, they can have a life? Can this relationship happen outside, or is it only going to happen within this detention facility? Which gets at the film's original title, Le Paradis, which translates as the paradise. Is the detention center paradis for these two lovers? Lots of natural lighting, which I appreciate in here. It's not shot with romantic golden hues, and it's not that hyper-realistic cold lighting of the 1970s. It's very naturalistic. Often there isn't a lot of dialogue. Jim, I know you don't like it when that happens, but like there's moments where Joe and William, their rooms, share a wall, and they're often sort of touching that wall with their hands, as if they're trying to touch each other, or as if they're holding hands. And there is that intimacy there as they sort of talk to each other. They can sort of hear each other through the wall, and they talk about, what they might do when they get out of the incarceration. In addition to physically intimate moments that they steal when no one is watching, there is this intimacy as well, like when William designs a tattoo for Joe, and then he uses a makeshift tattoo gun to actually apply it to Joe's arm. And I'm like, is that sanitary? But it's a very tender and a sweet moment. They're often dressed in like red t-shirts and shorts or gray sweatpants, so they're not like in orange jumpsuits. And while you see some skin, there are lots of shots for yearning. Like you don't see like nudity or anything like that. To get like the idea of yearning, you see like shots of like the waistbands of underwear, you know what I mean, and things like that. So no depictions of sex in there. There are shirts off makeout scenes to kind of show them. I mention that because the description talks about them stealing moments and not trying to be caught out, in a relationship with each other. So that's why I mentioned that. There is a choice made at the end of the film that completely changes the trajectory, and it comes out of nowhere, and it's not rooted in the characters at all. It's a dramatic ending that the writers shoehorn, jam into the script to be dramatic. And up until the end, I was really vibing with the film. I was going to give it 4 out of 5 stars, but the ending was too controversial to me, so I dropped it to 2.5 stars because the writing choice came out of left field, and I was left wondering, why the hell did they make that choice as both writers and the characters instead of thinking about the themes of the film? And so I don't want to give it away. And I know now folks are like, what was the controversy of it? And is it even worth seeing? I think it's worth seeing because you may find at the end that the choice was grounded. I just didn't feel like it was. I felt like the writers were going for let's be dramatic. Let's do something very cinematically dramatic. And I just felt like it didn't work here. So 2.5 stars. Worth it until then. Very tender, very, loving, I thought, wow, it was on track for 4.5 stars. It's just that choice at the end, and it's big and it's explosive, and you're like, what just happened? And yeah. So 2.5 stars for me for The Lost Boys, a 2023 French-Belgian production. Up next, we have a film from Greece, The Summer of Carmen, also from 2023. But I think it just came out here on streaming services, so it's 1 hour and 46 minutes. I apologize, I don't speak Greek, but it's directed by Zacharias Mavroidis. See, this is why I say I don't speak Greek. I'm just going to butcher these names. Also written by Zacharias and also Xenophon Chalatitsis. Chalatsis. Oh boy. It's starring Yorgos Tsiantoulas and Andreas Lampropoulos. It's available on the Deku streaming service as part of that subscription. Also available to rent on Prime Video. It may also be available on Apple TV Plus, YouTube TV, and Fandango, but please check those services to confirm current availability. The description: while having a day-long swim at Athens' queer beach, best friends Demos and Nikitas recall the events of a recent summer and the prospect of turning them into a screenplay for Nikitas' feature debut. Carmen, the Summer of Carmen, is not a person, but a dog. Carmen is Demos' ex-dog, whom he adopts. Was there animal violence? No, but there is one scene where Carmen is in distress at being left while Demos tries to go to work. But then Demos can't stand it and goes back in and comforts Carmen. Is there any anti-LGBTQ violence? No, there is not an HIV storyline. And the happy ending, I don't know about how you felt, Jim. For me, there was, but it wasn't there's not like a primary relationship where the two people like get together and they stay together at the end. It wasn't that type of a happy ending.
Yeah, I don't really know. The animal thing turned me off because it was just impossible for me to tolerate it, to listen to it. So I left the room at that point. But it always feels manipulative when you use animals. I'm not sure. It's good that he had a change of heart, I guess, but he didn't keep the animal. Didn't he just find someplace else to dump?
Well, not spoilers.
Well, I'm
Jim.
sorry, but I mean, it's like I didn't really like what he ended up doing anyway. He was sort of like, I'm too selfish for an animal. And I know that's probably a good choice for some people, but I always sort of hate characters like that. I remember feeling very neutral about it. It was, meta, sort of a weird meta thing. And there was lots of, nice looking men to look at, but it just didn't go very deep for me. I didn't get very deeply involved with the characters. So
okay. Well, the film takes place in the present and in the past. So Demos and Nikitas are going over that one summer where Demos broke up with his boyfriend, or rather his boyfriend broke up with him, and adopted Carmen. And they're writing a screenplay. So we cut back to that storyline a lot. But in the future, in the present tense, Demos and Nikitas are arguing about what really happened during that summer. The present scene, so the scenes in the present, are at a nude beach. There are not a lot of people on the beach, but beware, Demos is nude the entire time. Nikitas is not. Good thing that Demos had an excellent body to pull that off.
I was going to say, beware.
Well, I'm just saying for folks, there are not a lot of body positive people in the world, and there need to be.
That was the reason to watch it. It's not just
Demos, and that's on the nude beach. But I think that, so what's happening here, and I don't want to relay the entire plot because they go back and forth between themselves, Demos and Nikitas, about how Demos' boyfriend dumped him and how Demos did and didn't handle it, and how the boyfriend started doing things that he had told Demos for years he would never do, and then he's doing it, one of which is getting a dog, Carmen. But then the ex-boyfriend gets annoyed with the dog and is going to return it, and Demos gets really angry about this and sees himself in Carmen, so he takes Carmen. And this leads him to dating another guy because he's walking his dog and the other guy's walking his two dogs. And so it's a meet cute and, they have the sex. And throughout, you're kind of getting this back and forth of examining, like, is Demos, Demos is a character who's, committed. He didn't want to break up, but then afterwards, he's finding it really hard to commit to anything. And it's this weird space the film is in where it's not really a rom-com, but it's not a drama, and it's funny, but not like a comedy. And I think this is because Demos and Nikita are trying to sort out among themselves what the story is because they're writing a screenplay. And I think this helps and doesn't help because we touch on a lot of issues of what it means to be queer in the modern world, the dilemma of commitment. Demos is an actor, so he's being told he's too gay for the role, but in the gay world, he's too macho because he has this just really full beard and he's jacked. So while the meta take is playful, I didn't feel like it led to a satisfying ending. Even when there are, like, on the screenplay, because they're writing a screenplay, there's these big rules put in big font the intro, each section of the films. Like the first rule is every movie has 3 acts. And then the second one is every movie has a hero. And then every hero has a goal, and every hero changes in pursuit of his goal. And they are constantly talking about what that means, though. And, was Demos the hero? And if he was the hero, what was his goal? But was that really his goal? It's very meta. I give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was uneven. And I don't feel, because it was so meta, it knew exactly what it wanted to be. But it was pretty. It was playful. It has a cute dog. I say go see it.
2.5 stars.
Okay. Well, there we go. When we've got about a minute here before the break, so I don't want to start these next 2 reviews. What I will say is that we're going to talk about an Argentinian TV series, Everything I Like. And then with The Gilded Age coming back to HBO here towards the end of the month, we're going to look back at the queer storyline and Julian Fellows. Julian Fellows doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to writing LGBTQ storylines, but we're going to revisit it to see if he's going to turn it around in season 3. So one last break, lots still to get to here on The Gailey Show. You can keep the conversation going. Follow us on Blue Sky. We're at thegaileyshow.org. You're listening to The Gailey Show on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. We are coming up on the top of the hour, end of the week, so we're talking culture and entertainment. One series that I recently got to watch, TV series from Argentina. It's a very international day here on The Gailey Show. It's called Everything I Like. It is a 2019 series available on Tubi and Deku as part of those streaming services. Directed by Sergio Acosta and Guillermo Rivera on a script written by Acosta. Stars Milton Roses and Esteban Masturini, who was from Esteros, which is an excellent LGBTQ film, also from Argentina. 5 out of 5 stars. Go and see it, Esteros, Esteros, which is why I was excited about this television series. I wanted to watch it. Everything I Like. Short series, almost like a web series in terms like the episodes were only like 18 minutes long. And the description of it is when a handsome new cameraman is hired at his work, Daniel, a rather shy, kind-hearted young editor, feels his unexplored attraction to guys becomes more urgent, and his journey of self-discovery means learning also about the true nature of others. Was there animal violence? No. Anti-LGBTQ violence? No. HIV storyline? No. Happy ending? No. Not really quite sure why it's categorized under an LGBTQ film. I guess the Daniel does come out, so there is that. He has the, he does have an attraction to this new employee. It does lead him to coming out. The series starts with him in a relationship with a woman, and the new character is his love interest is also in a relationship with a woman, and then they sort of pursue a relationship, but then it turns out the new camera guy is actually straight, and he doesn't want to be in a relationship with Daniel. And the girlfriend comes by and tells Daniel, yeah, he does this all the time. He's not really gay. He just flirts with guys and does this and then comes back to me. And she's like, I was hoping he wasn't going to do that to you, but this is how it always plays out. And we're leaving. It was gross. It was gross. And then Daniel just ends up going back to his old girlfriend. So it's gay, I guess, because he went through a coming out process, and maybe he's bi now. And his roommate, also out, was helping him navigate his new feelings, but not worth it. Not worth it at all. So next, speaking of next, HBO's The Gilded Age returns this month on June 22nd. It will debut on HBO and then on HBO Max. Well, let's talk about the queer storyline, because Carrie Coon has said in press for this upcoming 3rd season that only the gays made this happen. she's paraphrasing her right now, but she said the third season happening because of the gays advocating for this film, or the series rather. And the series is very campy. There's lots of drama in it. Like, I understand why the gays were lining up to defend this series, and to, a lot of bitchy comments from folks, not of characters. It's really pithy lines that folks do, and I get that. The part about it that's actually queer is the storyline of Oscar Van Ryn, who, when we first meet him in season 1, is in a covert relationship with another gentleman. And the conflict there is that Oscar wants to break up with John so that he can get an heiress. And when he gets the heiress, he'll have lots of money, but there won't be a real relationship there. And then he can just play around with John all the time. So he's just trying to, make good and be a full gentleman of society. And so then we just watch him trying to find a wife. I don't even want to categorize it as a wife. So there's one, and then there's another one, and it's very, and then John disappears as well. It's a very Julian Fellows storyline. If you've seen Downton Abbey, the gay storyline there was very salacious. And then the minute he couldn't make it salacious, he dropped, the storyline there. And eventually, that character, I'm blanking on his name in Downton Abbey, did give him a sort of happy ending. Wasn't great. Julian Fellows, I think, excels when he's showing we were talking about this, Jim, that he excels when he's showing like how people ate and how they dressed, and the different relations between, how they all lived. When you're looking at these shows like that, Downton Abbey or The Gilded Age, it's very successful. But when you start dealing with social issues, you really see his weaknesses as a writer, and he really comes through as being an apologist for, the elite, the apologist for the, the CEOs and the kings, and look, they have a great heart, so they're all fine. Don't try to overthrow the elite. And so, that's a problem that I have with Julian Fellows as a writer. But Jim, what was your take on the gay storyline?
This is why we want a gay writer to write these gay relationships, because both of these in Downton and Gilded Age seem like the phoniest, shallowest, paper thin, unmotivated, unbelievable. You just cringe. It's like watching a child trying to write adults. You know what I mean? They're not qualified, and it's not believable. And so you don't care about them. You can tell that it's just being shoehorned in there maybe for demographics. I don't know, but I don't find either one of them satisfying. I feel bad for the actors. I feel terrible for everybody involved that they're going through this, because the guy doesn't know how to write that stuff. And I'm not saying he should. I just think it's hard maybe for that straight man to write about gay relationships authentically. I'll say that.
Yeah. There's like one or two scenes in the beginning where you're like, oh, but then you never actually see them afterwards, like kiss or be intimate together,
right?
Or, it's really...
He establishes it, and then it just sits there as a conflict on the shelf to always be a problem. Yeah. And it's very manipulative, and it doesn't add anything
but eventually,
to the story.
You're watching it, and you're like, oh, I had to remind myself in season 2, oh yeah, Oscar is gay.
Oh, that's right.
And it's very clear he's not bisexual. He's gay.
Yeah.
And so John is like, you're never going to be happy. You're never going to be happy. And Oscar's like, this is the only way that I can be a true gentleman of society, is to get an unwitting heiress and make my money and then live a life of leisure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll see what happens in season 3. Maybe he'll change. John says that they can just be bachelors for the rest of their lives and have a covert relationship. I'm sure that had its difficulties too. Definitely. Well, that is our show today. You can keep the gay going all weekend long. On Saturday afternoon is AM Pride on AM 950. Then tune in on Sunday for Out Chicago. And until next week, keep it queer, America.
Keep it queer.